Hello, everybody. Welcome to this screencast on OCI Data Labeling Service. My name is Praveen Patil, one of the product managers within OCI Data Science team, which is part of Data and AI group within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure team. So here's our agenda for the screencast. First, I'm going to talk to you about data labeling. Next, I'm going to give you an overview about the data labeling service. And third, I'm going to show you a demo within OCI console. This is just a safe harbor statement that we put out. First, let me start talking about an AI/ML lifecycle. To build any machine learning model, the first thing that we need to decide is defining a project. You need to define a project for a specific use case. Once you have defined a project, then you go and collect the data. Once you collect the data, depending on the type of data, you need to label your data. If it is unstructured data, especially images, text, speech, video, you need to have labeled data. Once you have done your labeling, you are going to go and build and train an ML model. So you've trained an ML model, again, it's an iterative process. You could find that you might not hit a desired accuracy or precision for initial set of labeled data, or you need to go and collect new labeled new data and then feed that into your training module. Once you have come through an desired accuracy or results, you go and deploy the model, and lastly, monitor your model. Based on the model monitoring system, based on the data drift or model drift, you need to go back and repeat the process. So you're either going to collect more data, or you're going to label more data, and then this process continues. So basically, you can see the AI ops, ML ops is an iterative process, and it all starts with defining a project and having good quality data. So that's where data labeling comes into play, is one part of that, achieving that AI/ML lifecycle, where you are able to generate high quality labeled data set and consistently labeled data sets that then can be used to build your initial model and repeat the process, repeat this iterative process. So this kind of helps you understand how there is a need from moving to data-centric AI from a model-centric AI. So now we have kind of understood how data labeling fits in that ML lifecycle. Now let's understand what is data labeling. So data labeling is basically a process of identifying properties in images or text, right? And then annotating these images or text with these properties. So it could be, you can imagine, right? You have a picture of a cat and a dog, and you want to classify these pictures as a cat and a dog, and you're tagging these images. Or you could have the same image, and you're trying to detect a cat and a dog, and you're basically drawing bounding boxes around these objects within those images to identify the cats and dogs. And same thing could be applied for text too. So as you can see, most of our data that is being collected around us is all in the realm of unstructured data. So be it medical scans, sensor data, tweet data, customer feedback, news articles. So most of it is in the realm of unstructured data. So this unstructured data kind of cuts across multiple industries. You go in retail industry, you go in healthcare industry, agricultural industry, government industry. This type of amount of data that is collected is spans across multiple domains, and hence labeling is a necessity for having or achieving or applying these ML workflows in any of these domains, right? And then it's one part of that module. Next, we have talked about how data labeling fits in that AI/ML lifecycle, and what is data labeling and why it is important. Now let's talk about what our data labeling service is on OCI. So for the initial launch, the labeling service will be tackling the simple and fast use case. What I mean by that is within few number of steps, you will be able to create a data set, ingest data from various sources, annotate or tag your data, and then export it, which then can be used to build custom AI/ML solutions. So the data labeling service will enable customers to build enriched label data set that then can be used to train their AI/ML models. This tool within the console, within OCI console, will allow customers to assemble data into data sets, grant access to labelers, and then we have provided rich user interfaces where they can go and do the annotation, store these labels, and then lastly export these annotated data sets, which then can be used to build custom AI/ML solutions. Plus, we also provide APIs that you can use along with our user interface to do your annotation tasks. So there's various data formats that need to be annotated. For our initial release, we are focusing on 3. So first, let me start talking about image. So image labeling. So this is where we support images. So it can be JPEG, JPG, or PNG formats. That is what we will be supporting for launch, where you can go and do and create single and multiple labels for images, or you can go and draw bounding boxes within the images. These then are used to build custom image classification and object detection models, either with AI services or data science service. The next data format we are supporting is text. For text, we will be supporting .txt format, where you'll be able to go and create text classification, and then you can highlight the words or span of words within a text. These then can be used to build text classification models, or you can build entity recognition or topic models or entity extraction models with your NLP with your MLP algorithms. Then lastly is documents. This is where you can classify documents such as purchase orders, invoices, receipts, which are then used to build custom document classification models. So as you can see, labeling is an important step in this workflow. As I said, initially we'll be focusing on simple and fast use case where you can imagine they can quickly do the annotation work and export the data set to build AI/ML models. So some of the use cases you can think of is, imagine you have an agricultural company which wants to rate the quality of their produce before the packaging is done. The company will employ labelers to label the produce, to classify the produce, right? On number of days it is going to ripen. So then this label data is basically used to train a custom model, which is basically integrated into your agricultural system or processes to basically automate the sorting process of your produce. So there you can see how you've taken your label data and then used it into your building your automated sorting ML algorithm that then can be used to sort the produce by ripeness. Another use case is manufacturing industry, where you can think of, let's say you have a manufacturing industry and the goods are produced and you want to detect defects after the goods are produced, and you build a object detection model to detect defects, and then which is then used to automatically detect the defects once new set of images are fed into the model. Next, who will be using the product, right? So as we talked about, right, data labeling is one component of achieving your AI/ML lifecycle. There's various other components that are required. right? But depending on the persona, right, you could have different folks using labeling service that they can use with different services. One is you could have data scientists who need to build a label data set. They can assemble the data set, the data records such as images and text, and then use our user interface within the labeling service to do the annotation and export that label data set into the object storage bucket and then pull it into OCI data science environment to build custom deep learning models or NLP tasks. So we know data scientists are much more well versed with Jupyter lab environment. They want to build their own deep learning models by either freezing the neural nets or changing the final layers of neural net to build a custom object detection models or image classification models. Also, same thing could be to build NLP solutions. So here they would use labeling service to do the initial annotation and then teach your ML model. So when new set of images or text is then fed, right, they're able to detect these images or text. The next is the developer or engineers. These are less sophisticated consumers or AI/ML, and they want to build their own labeled data set, right? So these developers or engineers would be using our AI services, but they want to further customize, our AI services models, and this is where they would come into the labeling service, do the annotation work, and further fine-tune their AI services model, right? It could be image recognition model in a manufacturing industry. It could be understanding the sentiment analysis or doing topic modeling on product reviews or customer feedback that you get for your specific use case. So this is where the developers or engineers would go in. They would use a labeling surface and use a labeling tool, assemble it, annotate it, and use to build custom AI service, custom AI language and vision models. So we talked about how labeling is part of that whole ecosystem, but per se, labeling alone cannot achieve your AI dreams, your ML dreams, right? It kind of needs to work seamlessly with other, depending on the persona, with other other AI ML products that we have as part of OCI. One is, we have our AI service vision and language service where you can go in and build your custom models. So the integration that we have here is where, you don't need, once you do the annotation, you don't need to do the transformation. You can easily, surface these exported data sets into building custom vision and language models. Also, you've not done your annotation work and you need to do the annotation work. There is a workflow that is available directly as part of your custom solution within AI services, where it allows you to do the annotation work, and then you can use that annotated data set to build a custom vision or a language model. And the next is a data science service. So again, as we talked about the persona, we could also have data scientists who want to do the initial annotation work and then use that to build custom deep learning models. What we are doing for the data scientist persona is allowing them to spend less time in data ingestion and transformation and spend more time in model building process. So we will allow either through APIs or Python wrappers, will allow them to do the ingestion from the object storage, do the data transformation based on the ML framework they're using for building deep learning models, and then they can rather spend more time in the model training and hyperparameter tuning part, and then spend less time on model ingestion and preparation. And then lastly, pricing. So as you can see, right, we will be charging based on annotated data record. Annotated data record is nothing but you can imagine an image, and you're drawing bounding box around that image. right? You could do basically highlight or detect objects like a cat or a dog, or you could classify that image into with various labels. Imagine you have a movie classification problem and you classify movies into the genres. So that once that image is annotated, we consider that as an annotated data record. And as you can see, the price is very competitive. We are 100th the price of 2 cents, so it's basically 0.002 per annotated data record. And again, with respect to competition, right, we are very competitive based on what our cloud offers with a similar service. Now let's look through the demo. As we walked through the presentation, I showed you what is the labeling service. I gave you an overview of the labeling service. Now I will show you within the console how it looks and some of the features that we offer as part of the console experience for you to do the annotation work. So once you log onto the console, you go in and click on the hamburger menu, and then go into Analytics and AI. Data labeling is right under machine learning. So you click on data labeling. And you're going to land here. So this is where all our data sets would be listed. You can go and change your compartment. You can filter by the state that is a data set is associated with. You can also filter by the annotation class. So what I mean by annotation class is either it could be classification type, single or multi-label, object detection, use case or annotation, or entity extraction for text. Then you can also go in and view details about this data set, add tags, create tags. You can also open support request if there are any issues. So once you land on this page, this is where all your data sets are listed. Before creating any data set, there are certain prerequisites that you need to follow. They are either listed here on the console, or you can even go into our documentation page, which will also give you the same instructions on creating these policies before creating a data set. So the next step is creating a data set. So before I create a data set, let me explain you what is a data set. A data set is nothing but a collection of data records, and data records are nothing but images or text. So a single image is a data record, a single corpus of text is a data record, and collection of these data records form a data set. So let's go through the process of creating a data set. I'm going to click on the button create data set, and here is a use case I want to do the annotation work. So I want to build an AI ML application. Imagine you have packages that are delivered in front of your home, and you want to build an object detection model to detect the type of packages, right? We know packages get delivered. These could be boxes, envelopes, letters. So here, I'm getting some data about package images, and then I'm going to use that to export that data, and then use that to import the data, annotate it, and export it to build an object detection model. So the first step is naming your data set, packages. Then the second step is description, where you can add some description. So as I mentioned in my presentation, currently we support 3 data types. One is image, text, and documents. For images, currently we support JPEG, JPG, and PNG formats. So based on the data format, we have different annotation class. For images, there are 3 annotation class: single, multiple, and object detection. Object detection is where you're drawing bounding boxes around the images to detect objects. Then the second data type is text. So here we have same for classification, either single or multi-label. And third is entity extraction. Here, where you can entity extraction is you can highlight the spans within your text to build entity extraction model. And third is documents. This is where you can classify your documents. Imagine you have books or you have pages within the books, or you have purchase orders, or you have receipts, or you have invoices, and you want to kind of classify these documents. And before you do that, you want to kind of do your annotation so you can build a custom classification model for these. So let's go and first, since our use case is detecting packages and the annotation class is object detection, I'm going to click on that. You can also create tags. This comes as part of the OCI functionality. Is very useful. Sometimes you may have created a lot of data sets and you want to have the ability to track them or search them, and you can use these tags. So then you click on next. So once you click on next, there's two options you have. One is you can upload your files from local directory, or you can select it from your object storage. Uploading your files from local directory makes you to save it in an object storage bucket. So you're required to give a path to an object storage bucket where you will use your files from your local directory, and then these files will be stored in the object storage. So I'm going to select object storage. I'm going to select the data. So as I mentioned, right, we have our use case where we want to detect the packages. So I've already saved some information in my object storage bucket, and these are some of the images. I can also give a prefix, and this can sometimes be helpful to understand your information that you have provided as part of your data records. So next, as you can see, you can scroll through your images that are stored in the object storage, and this kind of gives you a preview of what your images look like, before creating the data set. Once you have done that, next step is adding labels. As I mentioned, labels are basically properties that you're associating them to these images, right? So here, the labels we want to associate are whether this package is are boxes, or these are envelopes, or these are letters. Once you have added these labels, the next step is hit on next. And the last step is creation of data set. You're going to hit create. So what this does is this basically goes in and starts creating a data set. This is going to take a few minutes. In interest of time, let me go back to the dataset page. So I had recently created a data set for the purpose of this demo. So once the data set has been created, this is the dataset details landing page. So here is where you can see the information related to the data set. You can go in and see the labels that were associated with data set. You can go in and edit these labels. Right? You can edit the data set in here. You can go in and add new labels. Right? And once you do your annotation work, the next the step is export. This is where this click on this tab will allow you to export. That we will refer it to in future. So the dataset page also shows you what is the annotation class, then how many data records were labeled, right? When was it created? When was it updated? What was the format that was used? Plus, it shows you the list of the data records. Basically, data records, as I mentioned, are nothing but your images, right? It shows you here in this view. You can also click on gallery view, and your data sets are listed. Your data records are listed in the gallery view. You can also go in and filter your data records by the status, whether it's labeled or unlabeled. You can also, filter them by the labels that you have associated your images. Since in our example, we have not done any annotation work, the counter is 0. So to do the annotation, to basically start the annotation work, you can either click on the image name, or you can go on this on the side here and then click on label. So this is the dataset. This is the UI for object detection, right? So as I mentioned, my use case here is drawing bounding boxes to identify whether these are boxes or envelopes. So to do that, right, I have in this UI, right, I have a tools section. This allows me to create bounding boxes, remove any bounding boxes that I had created, adjust the brightness of the images, contrast or saturation of the images. I can also zoom in, zoom out, and do undo and redo bucket, redo actions. On the other side, this is where I have the labels that I had created as part of the dataset creation process, or I had added it after the dataset was created. And then we also provide shortcut keys, to fasten the process that if you want to use is available. And then below is the carousel. This is all where the images are, our images are displayed in a carousel way. You can also go in and filter by labeled versus unlabeled images. Right. So as I've said, my next step is creating bounding boxes. So we know these are boxes. So I'm going to create a bounding box and label it. I'm going to go to click on save and next, and that will take me to the next image. I can also skip if I don't want to do any annotation. For example, I want to skip this. I can do that. Right. So that no annotation work has been done there. Here, same thing. I want to, I want to label this here. So I go in and say save and next. So once all my annotation work is done, I can click cancel, and this brings me to the dataset details page. As you can see, I have 2 data records or images that were labeled out of 19. And once you finish all your labeling work, right, the next step is exporting these annotated data records. To do that, I'm going to click on export, and this allows me to select which buckets I want to export my annotated data set. So for example, here I want to export it to, I've created another bucket, annotated detect packages bucket, and this is where I want to store my annotated data records, which are basically images that have been drawn with bounding boxes. So after that, I can click on export, and then they are saved in that storage bucket. Right. So here we kind of saw how it works for object detection. So next, let's see how it actually works for for your use case of for your use case for text. Imagine you have customer feedback that is coming from various channels, right? It could be online forums, it could be coming from websites, it could be coming from your own from your own channel, and you want to understand the sentiment associated with these with this feedback, or you want to kind of extract entities from these from these feedback email messages. You want to extract from what domain it is coming, what is the associated organization they're talking about, right? What is the place, and what is the product they're talking about. So there's various use cases that you can you can think of from a text standpoint. So to do that for text, what I would do is I would let's say here I want to build an entity recognition model where I want to extract the entities, where my use case is understanding the domains where this feedback is coming from, what is the product they're talking about, and what is the place they are referring to. So this is a classic use case of building a named entity recognition model. So let me call it as NER. And then I'm going to click on text. So as I talked about in text, right, there is three annotation classes: single label, multi-label, and entity extraction. So this is a use case for entity extraction. So I'm going to click on entity extraction, click on next. And as I mentioned, you have an option of uploading from local directory or from object storage. Once you have done that, right, you can create your labels. So in interest of time, I've already created one here. So these are some close to about 700 or so text feedback that we have received, and we want to extract entities out of these text feedback, right, from emails that folks have given about the product. We want to extract the domains. So as you can see, the labels that I've created are domain, organization, product, and place, right? And similarly, as we were talking about for text, right, the details page will show you the list of all the text out there. You can go in and edit these labels. You can go and edit the data set, right? And you can click on gallery view. That gives you the same functionality where you can see all your text that is that is out here. You can add filters. Then you can also filter by your labels that were associated to the text, right? So as you can see, right, there were 5 text corpuses that had organization in them, and 7 of them, and there were 7 text corpuses that had domain entities highlighted within them. So do the entity extraction for text, you do the same thing. You can either click on the text, or you can go in on this on this on the side here, and then you can go and, let's say, since we have already labeled this, so it's showing as edit labels. So this basically opens a UI for entity extraction for for highlighting the text spans within the text corpus. Right. So I've labeled some of them here, right? So let me go through the next, where I've not done any labeling. So here, we have the labels here on your right hand side, which basically shows you all the labels, and and then we also provide the shortcut keys very similar to for images. So now, imagine I want to highlight this domain, right? I want to highlight this as this is associate domain, and the organization here is Detroit Tigers. Yep. And I think that's pretty much I want from this email that we have received. So I can click and save next. And henceforth, right, you can do the the text labeling here. Once you have done highlighting all your text spans within all these text corpus, you go back and hit cancel. So once you have done all the labeling, as you can see, the counter updated in terms of the labeled count. The next step is very similar to text. You go in and create the export button. And you can either export the annotated text data into existing buckets, or you can create a new bucket. So hope I have shown you the importance of data labeling and how it can be used either within your AI/ML lifecycle. As you saw through this presentation and demo, the service we have launched, and I'm hoping that you can give the service a try and use this service to build your AI/ML applications with either our data science service or with OCI services. Hope you enjoyed watching this screencast. And thank you for listening.